In today's session, it's going to be what I hope is going to be a pretty special treat for everyone here. We go on a lot of these presentations where there's a speaker, talking about a specific thing they're training you on. I got together with Jobber months ago, and we basically planned out this talk to just peel back the curtain about literally how difficult it is to run a home service business. So, and what the gurus are saying on social media that you can make $1 million in a month if you just manifest it, might have some unpacking to do in the theory there. So I want to pull back the curtain here for everybody. And I always pride myself on keeping my talks extremely practical and not too generalized. So we're going to actually get into my story of 16 years growing home service businesses. And I'm just going to be letting it rip with failures that I've had. So we tried to book in a 10-hour session for all my failures, but unfortunately we could only get 1 hour with Jobbers. So we're going to get into it and not waste any time. So let's go ahead with the session right here, unpacking business failures in the home service space. So I'll just literally spend 60 seconds for you on who I am and what I do. I always like to know who I'm learning from on these types of sessions. So my name's Dave. I currently run two companies right now. One is Revive Services. We're based just outside Vancouver, BC, and we're based in the exterior cleaning space. And I also run a consulting business called Home Service Business Coach, where we coach owner operators all around the world on how to scale up their home service business. So I've got a track record of 16 years doing this. I've hired over 150 team members throughout my career in home services, and we've helped hundreds of business owners scale up their businesses. So that's me professionally. I'm also a family man, married. I've got a great son and a little golden retriever at home. So really, my businesses are lifestyle businesses that have empowered me to live my dream life outside of the business. And I'm hopeful that you'll see through my story here today that it's not always up, up, and up. There are significant failures and there are significant setbacks when it comes to growing literally any business. But in this case, we're going to talk about home service businesses. So again, you guys, we're going to get into our agenda right here. Today. So the first thing in our 7-point series here, and we're going to zip through these. So, if you're a little bit squirrely brain like I am, don't worry. We're gonna make good time going through these. So the first thing I want to talk about, we're going to actually describe what failure is in business, what I believe it is. I'm going to be unpacking 3 really key failures that I've had along my way, which literally almost took my business. It like basically said, this isn't even worth doing it. I love number 5. I'm going to talk about actually strategies of how to cope with failure, how to cope with setback. And then we're going to get into some key learning to wrap up. And before we quickly dive into that, to describing failure, I'll just go ahead and say that I think something's really going to resonate with you here today watching this session. So feel free to take notes. We found in my journey, one of our most engaged social media posts wasn't me saying how great I am or how much money I made or people I hired. Like, people are so bored hearing that. I actually did a full post on all my failures, and I think Jobbers saw that and liked it, right? And they said, hey, we could probably make a session around this and get a lot of relatability here to business owners. So just you showing up today, huge thank you from me. And I hope to show some honesty and vulnerability through my journey. And I'm really hopeful that you can learn something. So let's get rocking and rolling here with failure in business. Let's talk about what it actually is. So first point I want to make, okay? And again, this is stuff no one talks about, and I believe you cannot find on YouTube, okay? Business is really hard, really freaking hard. Routing trucks around the town to homes and businesses, going into generally people's number one financial asset, or going into a commercial building or sending your crew to do your service, clean carpets, wash windows, cut the grass, whatever it is. It's really difficult, and businesses are complex, right? There's a lot of moving parts. So just the very nature of running this type of business in the real world, there's more complexity to it. And when there's more complexity, there's more probability of shit happening, right? Just things are going to happen. And so that's the first thing I want to go through. Business is really difficult. A quote I'm going to center on, I love quotes, is this one right here, okay? There's no failure, there's only learning. And I would challenge your mindset on this call. I love coaching entrepreneurs and challenging their beliefs. I would challenge you to think about problems actually not being bad in your business and your personal life. Look at problems like an opportunity to become better. I'll get into my failures in like 3 to 4 minutes. When failures happen, they knock us back, they take us off our feet. You will get paid, though, as an entrepreneur higher. You will get compensated higher the more value you provide to the world, and the higher, more complex, more meaty problems that you're able to solve. So if you want to earn more money in this space, you've got to almost saddle up and be okay with solving problems and having setbacks happen and being resilient and bouncing back. And that's the only trait, I believe, to be a successful entrepreneur. Where are you 0 to 10 on resilience, right? How gritty are you? That's what I believe is the number one indicator of success. So when things happen, they come on my desk. I'm not so happy about that. This is bad. This is really bad. I look at it on where's the learning that I can learn from this. And I'll get into this in strategies in my talk today. And then, like I talked about, right, sharing failures really builds authenticity with the audience. I want you guys to see, yeah, I've coached hundreds of people. That's great. I've grown companies. That's great. But people don't talk about their failures. And I think for me, I'm trying to be as honest and authentic as I can in this talk, because I think you're going to resonate with a lot of things of like, Dave said this, that's actually highly relatable. That's happening to me. So I want this to be a two-way discussion around business being hard. And I'll tell you right now, no business owner right now has it all figured out, right? We are all winging it to a degree. I believe some are further ahead on their journey and maybe on a different chapter, but by no means, if anyone says, oh, I've got it all figured out and business is turnkey and you don't have to do anything, it's mailbox money. That's just not been my case running businesses. I think you can set up systems, create a great lifestyle, and get out of the day-to-day. But as the owner, when you're signing the checks, you are still ultimately responsible for all the good and all the bad that happens in the business. And this is my next point. I won't go too deep in the psychology of this, but I think we run into issues as owners when we start playing the blame game, right? Oh, Sally crashed my truck, right? Sally was so careless crashing my truck. Why did Tom, leave all this moss on the customer's patio? Now they're calling me, they're upset. I always try and flip that and say, Dave, as the owner, where's your learning in this? What is your fault? It may not be your responsibility. It should have been the crew taking care of it, but it's ultimately your fault. You need to own the outcome as a business owner. And this is called, in psychology, I won't go too deep, it's called having an intrinsic locus of control. Myself, I'm the owner. I believe that I can affect change in my business, and I also take responsibilities for the actions that happen inside my business, and not pointing the blame game, right? My tech, this, that, the economy, this, that. No, I always look inward and say, what can Dave do better? What can I learn? And I believe that's a good way to hold some of the power in running a business, because you still are subject to many, many factors out of your control. So just really important unlock right there with the mindset. It's always your fault as the business owner. I had to limit it to 4 examples, but it's funny. I was talking through this talk with my wife last night. I was like, crap, you know what? There's a good 5th one that I didn't even note here. So we'll see if we get time for this. So first one, I live in a just outside a little beach town in British Columbia called White Rock. There's all these nice beach houses, right? We live about 10 minutes away. We got a contract to clean one of these beach houses and do all the homes. They were selling their home for something like $6 million. They brought my company in to do the window cleaning while we went in, and turns out we scratched 5 of their exterior windows, ended up being a $2,000 repair on a less than a $2,000 job. So we lost money. Our crew ended up messing that one up. That was maybe 4 years ago that we had that. Okay, that was the first incident. Number 2, I'm always of the belief to not sit in research, but actually get out and try stuff. Well, in my first year running a pressure washing business, we went out and bought a nice pressure washer. My crew took that on a nice wood deck. We actually ended up gouging the wood, right? Those in the pressure cleaning space, if you put your wand too close to the wood, you'll take chunks out of it. So we ended up chunking this whole deck all over. We ended up having to replace it at the time, $2,500 to get that deck fixed up. Again, Dave's fault. Dave wasn't the one on the pressure washer. My technician was. I'm still my fault as the business owner. Number 3, we were doing gutter cleaning in a very affluent neighborhood. Our employee was up on the roof. He had his gutter basket. He was putting debris in, ended up dropping that gutter basket, bounce, bounce, bounce. It actually hit our customer's awning. You guys know in Canada, there's a store called Canadian Tire, much like a Home Depot. Canadian Tire seasonally sells this like awning that has these like plastic kind of slats for their roof. Well, our gutter basket ended up punching right through that. We couldn't replace it. I had to go to Canadian Tire, literally buy a new one for this customer. That was a $1,400 like sunshade type of dealio. This is the, I'll just keep going. This is the fourth one. Okay. When I had my painting business, I sent in my my technician to go wash the house as he had done before. This was a heritage house in Vancouver, okay, big fancy city in Canada. And my technician took it upon himself because there was a vine growing up against the house. He was like, well, you know, the paint crew can't paint this house if the vine's not taken down. He went and actually bought clippers, hacked down that vine. What I later found out, that vine was like 100-year-old vine passed down from a generation, like grandparent. And my goodness, that was probably the most unpleasant phone call I've ever received. And I felt terrible. I had to talk to the customer. We ended up crediting her a bunch of money because we messed up that vine. And like, I'll just share the fifth one too. Another one, got a phone call a few years ago. We bought a new trailer for our business, and the technician driving that trailer actually backed up that trailer into a brand new F-150, dented the corner of the bumper, not super major until I got the repair bill, $1,800 repair bill, ended up going get it repaired. And instead of paying insurance, we just paid the customer the $1,800, got it repaired. So 5 property damage incidents in the last 5 minutes that I shared with you. And I'll get into some strategies of how we deal with this, but it's traditionally been my experience through home services that anywhere from like 0.25% to 1% of revenue will go to damages or issues that your crew or even you cause, right? I'm in the pressure cleaning space. So if you're using some cleaning chemicals, they can actually bleach out, you know, patio furniture, or even on paint on cars that can cause damage. And whatever industry you're actually in, I think this is highly relevant and not just a pressure cleaning example, right? I'll get into some more failures on my painting side of things. But there are all kinds of failures in business when it comes to property damage. And I just want to be authentic with everyone on this call and share, hey, this is what happened. This was the result. And this was even the financial hit to my business that really, really hurt. And so hopefully you can see some learning in this so far. Second failure, then I'm hit the third failure. Then we're going to hit strategies, and then we're going to get into questions and answers. So this is what I'm calling, we hit property damage, right? We got it. Cool. Failure 2, I'm calling decision mistakes. Okay. 2019, I'm out at our house with my wife. I'm having dinner, and I get a phone call that I'm owing $32,000 in taxes. Okay. So I learned there's something in Canada when you run a service business. Those of you seasoned business owners will be laughing right now because maybe you learned the same lesson. There's something called GST, okay? Goods and services tax. You pay 5% of that on every job that you do. That's just a thing in Canada that we have to do. Well, this year in business, as the year was wrapping up, we did about $600,000 in exterior cleaning that year in 2019. So the 32,000 was 5% of our overall revenue. I did not set aside money to pay those taxes, and it was a big miscommunication with the accountant. Now, I want to share my failure on this part. The accountant at the time was a buddy of mine, right? And he ran my taxes for super cheap, right? Like super cheap, like a few $100. He was going to corporate file for our business and also did my personal taxes back in the day. Well, I learned my lesson. One, it was Dave's fault, but the big fault that it was Dave's fault for actually hiring, you know, a overly cost-effective accountant, I'll call it, and getting some misinformation about not putting money aside for the GST tax bill. So that 32,000, that was a big percentage of our profit that year that I literally had to pay over the next year, right before the pandemic happened. And that was a tough one to swallow. So you're going to have some financial mistakes that will come up in your entrepreneurial journey. And in my case, it was that $32,000 tax bill, which was a huge kicker. And maybe you want to put in the chat that you might have learned this lesson too. You didn't put some money aside for taxes, and whether you're an LLC or you own your corporation or you're an S corp, however you've set it up, it's different in every area. Take it from me, bit of money aside for your taxes. You get what you pay for, I believe, with professional services. And if you hire, I'm not saying all buddies are bad, but if you hire a cheap accountant, you might miss some things along the way and might end up owing a big tax bill. In my case, it just is the way it is with business. All right. Number two, I still remember vividly, I call him Painter Bobby, okay? It was peak season. I was running my painting business. I went into Starbucks. I texted Bobby. I met him on Craigslist, right? You can see where this story's already going. Sit down with Bobby, interview. We're already backed up like 6 weeks in our production schedule. Bobby told me he painted before. Awesome. Seemed like a nice enough guy. Cool. Literally hired Bobby on the spot. Okay. Probably a mistake. Didn't call references. Didn't really know how to run a behavioral based interview either to actually gauge for core values. We could talk about that if we have time in the Q&A. But I brought Bobby on. I got him to site. I texted my lead painter, hey, Bobby's coming to site, put him to work type of thing. Well, lead painter didn't really oversee Bobby. Again, Dave's fault, but crew leader was in it as well. And Bobby ended up literally wrecking this house. Like we call it wood trim painting for those of you painters on the call or watching the recording. You'll have these vinyl sided houses all through the West Coast here in Canada, and they'll all have wood trim on them, right? Wood peaks around the wood frames. Well, Bobby got our paint not just on the wood trim. He literally like overlapped onto the vinyl by about 6 inches, like all around the windows, just slopping on the paint, making a huge mess of it. So we ended up more than a day having to clean all that vinyl. We fired Bobby on the spot. It was a terrible hire. It was a decision mistake on my part. It did not help our production schedule. And I learned a really tough lesson through that all, that be really careful who you hire. I learned the lesson. You know what, Dave? I'd rather be short-staffed in my business than make a panic hire and just bring a body to the job site, so I feel like we're moving ahead with production. But Bobby was incredibly sloppy and we did not have the proper management structure to oversee his work. So be cautious who you hire, because they can actually set back your business, and externally it's a huge failure. Now, again, I see this as learning in my journey, but at the time it really knocks you off your feet and you wonder, like, man, are all employees this bad? Are all employees like Bobby? How can I ever scale this business? Does anyone want to actually paint for a living? These are all the questions that flood our brain as entrepreneurs. And hopefully through this session, you can actually see some relatability and say, oh, cool. Like even the business coach right here makes hiring mistakes, right? 100%. Not all hires are created equal. I call it the $30,000 paint job. Okay. So I got this little tradition. I take our 18-month-old son to Starbucks more mornings than not, and we grab coffee. Well, the Starbucks that we go to right across the street is this, we call them stratas in Canada, or a multi-housing complex, right? It's like row homes, like 30 of them in a row, like boom, boom, boom. They all have a shared wall. Well, I ended up picking up a contract for that for that strata corporation to paint all the exterior wood trim. This would have been back in 2014 to 2015. And a colleague of mine said, hey, Dave, I have this $30,000 job. I actually can't produce it, but I think it'd be good for you to take on, right? My colleague had to go back to business school, whatever. I said, yeah. I said, my buddy, Ryan, no problem. I got that job. Well, I signed on the dotted line for this $30,000 job at about September 15-ish. And anyone who's on the West Coast knows that we're in a seasonal market. So by early October, it's really difficult to paint outside because you're subject to the elements of the weather, right? So I took on this job and I ended up painting for like 16, 17-hour days. I was texting everyone I knew to try get this job done. That I vividly remember meeting my sister on the patio for a nice coffee after like she was a nurse across in the town too. We'd meet for coffee. It was like 8:30. I remember literally laying on a concrete patio at Starbucks, absolutely dead tired after painting for almost 3 weeks, like straight, to try get this job done. I did not finish the job. It ended up spilling over into the previous spring where we did complete it, but I still drive by that complex and see it. And now I can smile. But at the time, you guys maybe put in the chat, have you ever signed a job that you were out of your depth, right? I should not have been taking on a $30,000 job. That would have been for our business, hundreds and hundreds of hours of labor that I did not account for. I didn't have the team. I didn't have the weather. And I think the money probably clouded my vision at the time and said, man, I could make 30,000, of which I could easily make 15,000 of profit. And I signed up for it. And I was also maybe trying to be a nice guy and help Ryan and take this job. These are all the things, hindsight, you're just like, why on earth did I do that, right? Some jobs you'll go into produce next month, you'll say, where was my mind when I quoted this job, right? This isn't a $10,000 job. This should be $18,000, right? That's a mistake. It's always how we reframe that problem and how we actually respond to the mistake that we made. So if I look at 32,000 in tax, I hired Bobby, who messed up a house, and I took on a $30,000 paint job I had no business doing. When I look at that now, years down the road, I can see the learning in it, right? But at the time, this is like the biggest thing occupying my brain that I'll share a quick strategy that helped me a lot. I've actually filled up more journals than I can count, just going through and writing out all the problems that my business had that week, right? And I'll jot them down and jot them down. I'll look back on those notebooks months and years later and be like, oh, I remember that was Dave, like literally in this headspace. But you'll get perspective as time goes on. And I think it's a really important trait as an entrepreneur to have perspective and actually be able to look back at the journey and see where was the learning here. So those are my big decision mistakes. Just again, I'm grabbing 3 of them off the top of my head. But if we had 3 hours here, I could keep going. But I think you guys are getting the point here of what I'm saying. So we're going to hit my third failure here of leadership failures. I love this one. I'll talk about it. There's 2 kinds of entrepreneurs, okay? Entrepreneur is entrepreneur 1. They really are like control freaks, right? I'll just call you out on this call. You got to know everything, right? Your jobbers got to be color coded. You got to be inbox 0. You have a really hard time hiring and trusting people. It's really difficult for you, right? All right, entrepreneur 2, you are actually like me, okay? You love delegating. You'll hire out for everything, right? You want someone cutting your grass, cleaning your windows. You love hiring. You want to get that not ROI, return on investment. You want your ROT, a return on your time. I want to get stuff off my plate. Put a 2 in the chat if you're actually really good at delegating. But here's where it catches up to you. I'm really good at delegating, but here's the secret. I'm actually not good at holding accountability, okay? If I look at more than 150 team members I've hired, I look at where I'm weak as a leader. I actually give employees too much freedom in their role, right? You want to work remote? And I've tightened this up, I'll say with this, but over my track record, looking back at failures, I'll give people too long of a runway. So, you want to start a little later? No worries. You want to get off early? No problem. Billy's got a T-ball game? Go for it. You missed your sales mark? That's okay. There's always tomorrow. You tend to be kind of toxically optimistic and you trust everybody, right? I would give my whole staff my house key if I could, right? Most of you are like, that's super weird. But that's just how my mind works, is like the pie is massive, this big abundance mindset, but it catches up to you when you actually don't hold people accountable. And so in recognizing that, it's really important. I put the quote here. This is from one of my mentors. I'm sure you guys have heard of Tommy Mello in the space, right? He's got a quote, you inspect what you expect, right? So if you find yourself to be up in the clouds and big visionary and planning all the strategy and 3-year visions, that's great. You really need to make sure, though, that you carve out the time when you put someone in a role that you actually have time in your schedule to actually look into their role and what they're doing. So in a lot of the roles in my companies now, the last couple of years, we've started up end of day reports, which is my office managers say, we'll fill out an end of day report. So I will know how many calls came in, how many estimates did we send, how many jobs did we book, the dollar amount we booked, how many hours they worked that day. And lastly, they actually grade their performance 0 to 10. So today I feel like I performed at a 6, I had a short night of sleep, whatever else. Or today I was rocking. I got a 9 out of 10, blew out all the emails. I put 5,000 on the schedule, really good day, right? So end of day reports is a great strategy for keeping team members more accountable. But the other thing I'll tell you where this can fail, if you tend to be this rose-colored, it's all good glasses, which I tend to be, and that is a failure on my part, is you will avoid conflict and you will actually avoid crucial conversations in business, right? So there's been employees I've had over the years that will stay with me because Dave is a nice boss, right? Well, that is fine for them. But if you're not holding accountability, and when you see something kind of off, I would encourage you, if you're like me and you kind of avoid conflict and you want to be liked by your staff, you have to dive into conflict at specific times in your business. Otherwise, you end up having, a very like loosey-goosey, low-performing culture, and will actually drive out the A players in your business to say, there's not enough rules in this company. I'm going to head out, right? And so I think it's important to give employees independence in their role, but you want to be careful that it is a slippery slope where you can almost give. I tend to give too much because I usually take on too much and like to do a whole bunch of different stuff that once something's delegated for me, it'll be out of mine. But there's a difference from delegating versus abdicating, right? Abdicating is saying, here you go, Susan, be my office manager. I'll be back in a month, right? It's not going to work to start up that role. I think you can work up to more freedom, but you got to kind of take your time with it. So put a 1 in the chat if that's resonating with you. That makes a lot of sense with when you're hiring. Yes, we delegate. I think it's an overused buzzword in business, but I also think there's a negative to this, that sometimes as owners, we put a crew in, we go take our mom out to lunch, we think everything's running great, and then we get a phone call from the customer, right? Your crew actually did a really bad job. I actually got your review link from Jobber to leave a review, and I cannot leave you a review because this was not done very good. That's what I'm talking about. That let down from like the standard to the delivery, there's a gap there, and that's where really systems come into place. And I'll talk about that here in my strategy. Okay, so for strategies, we'll hit this for 5, and then we're gonna have 20 minutes of Q&A. And great to see everyone in the chat going. I really hope there's been good takeaways here of just no BS, practical. Like, again, I just cannot stand teachers that have a business degree and teach theories from a textbook. I have a business degree and I teach from the real world from the last 16 years. So hopefully you're learning something here. So first strategy, this is a bit of a mindset adjustment, okay? Poor people will actually pay with their time. Wealthy people will actually pay with their money, okay? And that might offend you hearing that, but I've done a lot of research on this and I believe it to be true. Time is our most precious resource. We can always get more money, right? We cannot get more time. And so the first strategy is knowing money is cheap, time is expensive. So for me, that first example of all these thousands of dollars of failures, you have to know, and it sucks at the time, right? Sending a $2,000 refund to a customer, or marching into Canadian Tire and dropping $1,400 on a stupid little awning thing that, again, we screwed up. So I got to own it, right? But money is cheap. There's always more jobs that will come into your funnel, but it's really the time that's expensive, right? And it's this quote I love: if it costs you your peace of mind, it's too expensive. So I was in our office last week. My office manager had 2 customers she wanted to talk about. She said, hey, these 2 are, we call it the PETA factor at Revive, pain in the you-know-what. High PETA factor on this person. I want to let them go for these reasons. I said, sounds great to me. Let those clients go. We do not want to service them again. They're Christmas-like clients, right? Good size accounts, over $1,000 accounts, but they cost us our peace of mind. They beat up on our crew. They're annoying to deal with. They always haggle us on the price. They are not worth having. So that's what I'm talking about, the peace of mind. You guys have some clients right now and employees occupying precious real estate in your brain. I would encourage you to have the courage this year to actually step out and respectfully either terminate a client or respectfully tell an employee this is not a great fit anymore. And if you're wondering, I wonder what's the issues in my brain, literally ask your partner, ask your spouse, because we could march upstairs and go talk to my wife and say, what's stressing Dave out right now? Boom, boom, boom. These are the things that occupy the real estate in the brain. So I like to close off browsers in my brain, I call it, because I want to have creative space as an entrepreneur and a business owner. So I've just traditionally found, look, if something's a few $100 or $1,000, like, Yeah, you could go the small claims court route and put a lien on the house, and that's fine, right? But in my case, if it's a small amount of money, there's always more money. I don't want to spend my precious time running after this pain in the butt client that could probably be a dead end. That's just my mindset on it. You may disagree with it, but I, again, just see the world as so big and time as finite that we need to be really cautious where our time goes. So that's a first strategy I have. Look, when failure happens, when we have a really difficult person to deal with, I value my time significantly more than money. And it doesn't mean be careless with your money. I still love saving $1, but I love my time a lot more than money. All right, number 2. I love this one. Key takeaway here, writer downer. Problem comes to Dave today. First thought in my head, is this a people problem or is this a process problem, right? Maybe you've heard the famous story. Someone smarter than I, founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, literally went into one of his stores back in the day. He saw a light on the Starbucks sign was burnt out. He didn't go into the store and berate the barista or the store manager, or the shift supervisor. He called in head office. He said, hey, head office, what is our process around when a light, when whatever letter it was, when the T burns out on the Starbucks sign? What is our process, right? As entrepreneurs in the home service space, problems are going to happen to everyone today, this week, this month, this year. You need to ask, is this a people problem? Did, in my case, right, people problem with Bobby, probably didn't have the attention to detail that a painter should have for someone, spending $5,000 to get their trim painted on their house. People problem, green check mark. Process problem, yes. Interview process, poor at best. Management process from crew leader, poor at best. Big process problem in my painting company. So you want to look for process problems, and we've made it so much in our and I'll just say this, you want to have playbooks for your business as well. So in my cleaning business, we now have a hefty training manual for how we do our jobs. And in one of them, we call it the do's and don'ts of washing. That our don'ts pages are literally pictures of the jobs we've screwed up, right? I have a picture of the deck we screwed up. I've got a picture of those windows we screwed up. I've got a picture. And so you want to, again, no mistakes, only learning. You want to look at this mistake happened. How can we change our process around this? And I'm coming up with a hack for you right here. With your team, steal this line, write it down. Do we want 1,000 of these types of jobs? I tell my team this, they probably hate me for it. I want to say every 1 to 2 weeks, right? So if you have a client and it's a really difficult job and Judy Smith is a huge pain in the butt, ask yourself, ask your office team, what if we had 1,000 Judy Smiths on our jobber calendar this year? How would we feel? We would all be quitting our jobs, right? So you want to look for scalable processes. And in my case, we want clients that respect our work. They're pleasant to deal with. They pay right away. They leave reviews. That's how it should be. And a really quick strategy for a business, if you're in home service space, especially residential services like I am, build a 1,000 customer business that does $1,000 for the jobs you do. If you do that, you'll have a 7-figure business. Dumb down that, go 500 clients that pay you $1,000 a year. There's a $500,000 business. So be really cautious who you let on your production schedule, because I believe it can create, it's fun to book a job, fine. But when you set up your production team, or even you as the owner having to go out and do that job, that pit in your stomach, you see your iPhone, right? Judy's calling, you're like, why am I even dealing with this right now? So that's what I'm talking about. Time and peace of mind is expensive. Money is cheap. Have the courage this year in 2025 to stop a bad situation before it happens, and know that you're not coming in my boat, right? My business coach told me this, and then we'll get to Q&A. He told me, pretend your business as if you're out in the water on a yacht and you guys are having the best party right now, right? A customer is out on the beach and they're saying, hey, Tom, let me come do my windows, right? You need to gauge in your yacht, you know what, everyone, is it worth us sending the Zodiac to go pick up Tom, to get him in our yacht, to join our party? If you looked at that analogy, we're sending way too many Zodiac boats for pretty crappy clients that you would say, heck no, do I want 100, 1,000 of these Toms in our business, right? I won't go too deep down because I'm starting to coach too much here. This goes for employees as well, though. If you have a pain in the butt employee, ask, do I want 10 of these employees in my company? If the answer is not heck yes, you have a hard conversation that you need to have. And I'm preaching to myself here because, again, made all these mistakes. That's why I believe I'm very qualified to give this session on how I failed, how I've learned from it, and then strategies directly for you, because I think there's a lot of situations here. You're like, this is almost as if Dave's seeing my email or jobber, because this is so similar. We all deal with very similar problems in scaling up our companies. Key learning, we talked about it. There's no failures, there's only learning. We talked about that, so we'll keep going. This is a key point I want to make before we move on to Q&A. Business growth is moving, as my mentor told me this, moving from chaos to less chaos, okay? The very fact you're scaling a company, just if you take nothing off this session, stop expecting problems and stop telling yourself that problems are bad and they shouldn't be happening to you. Problems should be happening to you because you're stepping out in courage to scale a business. You're in the 3% of the world that are weird entrepreneurs that cannot work a 9 to 5. You traded your 9 to 5 for a 5 to 9, and you signed up to solve problems and get paid for it. So those 3 things I just said, your whole life is just moving from chaos to less chaos. That's all you're trying to do every day, is just make the machine 0.5% better. That's all we're trying to do with business. Stop expecting this turnkey purple unicorn, no problem business. I've just not seen it in my coaching role or in the companies that I've grown. So I'll just leave it at that. And yeah, don't expect a perfectly smooth sailing ride in home services. I don't want to paint doom and gloom. Like I shared some stats with you guys. I've made a lot of money in this space. It's given me a great life. We all know that is all good, right? But I want to start pivoting the conversation in the next few years around how difficult scaling a business is and how it's generally not a smooth sailing ride. And that's why 80% of those on this call, like to be ruthless with everyone, 80% of you won't hit a 5th year in business, and 80% of those of you that do won't get to your 10th year, right? So the very fact of just staying in business is the ultimate success. And my final point I'll make, I believe the fact that everyone here gets to wake up today and has air in their lungs and is generally healthy and gets to wake up and grow their own business. I personally believe regardless of revenue and profit and time freedom, you've already hit the lottery that you get to wake up and live your dream every day. So give yourself a bit of patience, a bit of grace as you scale up your business, because I believe as entrepreneurs, we've already hit the jackpot. That's how I feel every morning.
Thanks everyone for participating. I'm going to jump straight into Q&A here. Here's the first one that has a few votes. My husband and I have been running our business by the seat of our pants for many years. It is catching up to us big time, and we need to completely restructure, actually add structure to our office. Where would you suggest would be the best place to start, David?
Love it. We'll do these quick, Molly. It's such a good question. Thank you, Sean. So the first thing I think is a quote. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. So I would say to Sean, you could look at bringing on an office admin for, say, 20. I don't know your market, but generally $20 an hour to have someone come in, pick up inbound phone calls, take care of your company email, literally be the champion on your Jobber account if you're using that. That's always been the best first hire I've made. And I'll share a quick thing from my coach, Dan Martell. He says that if you can get anyone at 25% of how you value your time, you should go ahead and make that hire. So Sean, if you can make $100 an hour doing your thing on the job site or selling, $25 an hour. If you get anyone for less than that in your office, you should get that off your plate. So look at the administrative task. That should be the first hire in a business. And I personally believe you should not own a business larger than $100,000 unless you have a part-time office admin assistant.
Great. Thank you for that. Next question. How do you determine which failures to share with your team, or do you just share them all?
I pretty much share them all, Dan. I love this question. I believe in open book management. So I have yet to someone to ask me a question that I've like not just shared the answer to. So that's just how I roll. You may be a little more private than I am, but for me, if something happened in business, it's a failure. Of course, I'll share that. Obviously, if I'm in a one-to-one with an employee and they're talking about something sensitive with me, that's obviously not going to get shared with the team. So when there's confidentiality request on my team member's part, that's confidential, me to employee. But if it's anything to do with the business, whether we're showing our numbers, our marketing plan, what Dave's doing, I personally believe in living one authentic life that my mom, my wife, my employees all know me as just one Dave, and not having these 10 different avatars of yourself.
Nice. I want to note that Sean said, great, we did hire someone this year, so we're on the right track. Thanks,
Man,
Dave. That's great.
Good job, Sean. That's awesome. The next thing I'll give you, Sean, is then you want to look for a rock star in the field. So as you get your business past $250,000, you want to bring someone on full-time that can do your service. If you've done that, level 3 is get the owner out of the sales department. That's generally where I see the successful companies. The owners move out of admin, they move out of the field, and they move into like a marketing director role. That's where I sit right now with my cleaning company. I run the marketing, but I'm not in those other day-to-day tasks as mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, great. We got a little roadmap there. Okay. Pre-submitted question people want to hear the answer to. What is a common marketing mistake you see business owners make in your coaching role?
I would say the number one, and this is our first module, is doing a time audit on your time. So if anyone goes right now on ChatGPT and says, what is the average income that a home service business owner makes or how they value their time? ChatGPT will tell you $20 to $50 per hour. So I believe a whole home service business can run paying employees $20 to $50 an hour. So as the owner, the best thing you can do, I believe, is value your time above $50 an hour, ideally $100 an hour. So in Sean's case, I would like Sean to go be the rainmaker for the business. Go out and meet customers, go meet property managers, develop the business, be the business development manager, and really value your time. When the owner doesn't grow their business, they stay stuck doing those $20 to $40 or $50 an hour tasks, which can be hired out for. And it's kind of like a chicken or egg thing, Molly. We first need to respect our time and give it 2 or 3 months to put someone in the role to start getting some momentum on the business. So for those of you wanting to hire, if you've got 10 grand in the bank, I would look at bringing someone part-time on into your office and start growing kind of up. I call it the contractor growth ladder. That's kind of where you want to start moving. So first thing, if you want to be like not make the biggest mistake, is actually value your time as the business owner. And last thing I'll share, do an audit on your calendar. Okay. I believe in block scheduling. So I'll have specific, running 2 companies, I'll have specific points in my day that I'm doing different things. And I'll usually chunk out a 2 to 3 hour block where I'm doing, team meeting, I'm doing prep, I'm making content, I'm doing this. And I'll even block out time for date night, for working out, for doing stuff that Dave loves to do as well. So my calendar is really my Bible of the week for my time. And that's really where I follow it. So respect your time, give your give your time a dollar amount, and then follow your calendar as best you can.
Okay, I'm going to actually ask for a level 2 on that one then. So I'll just share it again. So you are kind of saying like, before you go spend money on getting other business in, like make sure you're valuing your time and so that you can go and do business development. So pretend that you've done that. Now we're talking about marketing channels, spending marketing dollars. What's the common mistake you see there?
Oh man, overspending on marketing is like, I would say severe overspend or severe underspend. Okay. I was on our call with some of my private clients yesterday. Some of them were spending too low on marketing, and too low on marketing, I'd say, is like less than 3% of your overall revenue. You're literally just going to maintain your business, if not drop. So my magic number, non-negotiable, is spend 5% of your revenue into marketing and growing the business. We'll talk about strategies in a sec. If you want really aggressive growth, right, you talk to someone like Tommy Mello, he's going to tell you 10%. So I would say 5 minimum, as high as 10, need to get invested back into the business. Now, big mistakes, Molly, I would say we see overspend on pay-per-click ads this last year. Like, again, giving money to Google is fine, and we do in my company, but you really have to monitor that, because you can end up spending $2,000 to book $2,000 of work is a really bad return. So we've seen return on paid ads come down over time, but typically if you can put, $1,000 into Google or Facebook, and if you can return a 5x return, I used to say 10x, but how expensive it's gotten, usually 5 is like a pretty good benchmark. But I believe in 10x marketing, Molly. So I would not spend a dime on paid ads until I've dialed in my organic marketing. I was just sharing with the Jobber team. We've sent 5 Jobber emails this year. We've booked $140,000 of work on our calendar in exterior cleaning. How much did that cost me? Almost next to nothing. So client re-engagement, if you've not texted, emailed, or phoned your client list, get off this call. That is the first thing I would be doing when it comes to organic marketing. And if people want to hear in the chat, we can keep going down that rabbit trail of organic marketing, or we can hit another question as well.
Bill was actually saying, is it your current revenue that you're spending 5% on, or your target?
Target. So if I want, like, let's just say, Bill, you did 200 grand last year. You want to grow to 400 grand. You want to double the business. We need to take 5% of that 400. So Bill, I would say, here's 20 grand. Go and book $200,000 and close the gap. And you could go as high as 10%. I'd say 20 grand base. You could go up to 40 grand. And I'll just say this, Molly, one other common mistake. I think we don't press pause and actually build out what does our business look like in 3 years. And in my personal life, Molly, it's literally right here on the wall. It's a 5-year painted picture, what Dave's life looks like at December 31st, 2029, and how my companies fit into fulfilling that dream outcome. And I think we don't hit pause and think, what could our business be in 3 years? And like, what role do I want to have in that company? Because some people on this call, you want to sell your business. Others of you want to more automate it. And some of you just love working 80 hours a week. And 3 years from now, you still want to be working 80 hours a week. But most owners want more time freedom and they want more income from their business. And I don't want this call to go by without mentioning the word systems, okay? If you've got time right now in a seasonal market, literally build out a Google workspace. So my whole business runs on different folders in Google. We've got a marketing folder, sales folder. Molly, we just put all our systems in that we've built. And we say the word systems, that's a whole nother conversation, but we need to be building things, processes for tasks that recur in our business. That's really how you get out of the day-to-day and how you build a successful business.
Thank you. Okay, switching gears here. Andrew asks, how to determine labor rates and keeping employees satisfied and retained?
Yeah, really good question. It's one of my passions, Andrew. Like, I think if we looked at the business skills I've accumulated, the only thing I do, I believe the best in world at is attracting and retaining people. I've got people in my cleaning business that have worked for me for 4, 5, 6 years, and I'm really proud of that. So the first thing there's a lot to this, but I'll just go off. I'll share a few and then I'll shut up. First thing I do in your market, go on Indeed and research what does a pressure washing or painter or landscaping technician make per hour. Red hot tip, if you're getting nothing from this has always served me well, pay 15% above the industry average. So if I'm on Indeed today and the average painter makes $25 an hour, I'm going 25 times 1.15, 15%, whatever the math is on that, probably almost 27, 28 bucks an hour. I'm going to recruit with that higher dollar amount in line. I purposely overpay all the people in both my companies because I expect really high performance and I just don't like dealing with little issues. So if you want to hire an amazing person who thinks critically and solves problems, I believe you have to pay for it. Number 2, rockstar employees want career advancement, okay? You've got to learn what their goals are. What do they want? You probably don't know what it is right now. When you learn that, you can start to use your company as a vehicle for the employees to meet their goals. I know I've talked about Tommy on this call. I'm talking to him this Friday. He wrote a book called Elevate, really good book on how to build culture and how to keep people on your team. The last thing I'll say here, I think it was Bill who asked the question, create a job ad, Bill. This is a system, again, that really speaks the language of the ideal target avatar, we call it. What is a job ad that would pop off the page and you might want to get a professional copywriter? I don't care, how long your business has been around or what services you do. Our job ads talk about the culture that they're joining, the team that they're joining. It's not about cleaning gutters. It's about joining the Revive team, the Revive family. You need to write a job ad that really speaks to that person and really kind of hits them right in the heart. And I think most home service business owners have like 3 out of 10 job ads as far as quality. People read them, they're like, this just looks like every other job ad. So you want to be different. You want to be kind of purple unicorn. And those are just a few tips off the top of my head when it comes to hiring. And the last thing I'll say is hiring the right people in, like hiring employees in your business, you'll have one of two outcomes. It's a dream outcome because they're competent and they run the business, or it's an absolute nightmare because you lack systems, you underpay, and you're like a poor leader. So you're going to be in one of those two camps.
Okay. We have time for one question, I think. While Dave is answering this question, you are all going to see a survey pop up right away here. If you can take a few moments to answer that before you leave the event, give us some feedback. We'd appreciate it. Your feedback helps us continue to make these better. So, okay, here's a meaty one to end with.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a long-term employee whose production has suddenly declined and refuses any constructive criticism or offers to help?
Yeah, it's a really good one. I mean, one is I always like rewarding, like it's a hybrid of rewarding loyalty and performance. So in trades today, like even with our generation, we don't see a lot of loyalty in our business. So I think recognize that employees probably help you get to the state you are. But I would have that tough conversation and say, look, you've helped us get to where we are, but for us to move to that next level, like I'm going to need to see some things pivot with your behavior, maybe mention a few key situations. And I think, offer coaching, and it comes down to your core values. For us, we want, Kaizen's one of our core values, continuously improving. So if I have an employee that's stuck and has a closed mindset, they're going to have a really hard time fitting into a company that's wanting to move the bar and level up. So I would say have that tough conversation and be okay with some change as well. But I think you can have those conversations respectfully, thank them for the loyalty, but also be really sticky on where your business is heading and keep all your employees aligned around your core values is another important piece.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you everyone for tuning in today and being so great in the chat. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.